YouTube. This is your host, Rainy B, here to spill that homicidal tea. In today's case, we're going to be serving some strong-ass tea. I mean, today's case is full of strong people. Advocacy and perseverance are up today for this case. This is the case of Steven Stayner. There's going to be some weird edits in this one. I mean, even as I'm writing this intro earlier, I started crying. It's terrible. This is not going to be easy for me, so I'm skipping the typical paragraph, begging for subscribers, because a story like this, it doesn't deserve to take backseat to anything. So let's just jump right into the story of Steven Stayner. In order to get to the story of Steven Stayner, we first have to start with Kenneth Parnell. I don't like focusing on these people, but it's important to know some of this stuff, I guess. Kenneth Parnell was born on September 26, 1931. Kenneth was just a bad kid. He was in constant trouble. He was in trouble all throughout his childhood, as well as his teen years. He was in and out of juvie. He was sent to mental hospitals. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but back then, whenever somebody was out of control, they just sent him off to a mental hospital. So it's not like, oh boy, was dealing with anxiety. This guy was like criminally effed up. But anyway, he went to detention centers, all that kind of stuff. Just not really on the right narrow path. In 1950, he gets married and starts what seems to be a somewhat normal early adult life. Marriage, fatherhood, work, and all that. You know, the 1950s, normal mess, you know. Well, that is until the next year, in 1951, when Kenneth gets a fake deputy sheriff's badge somehow and thinks it's a good idea to pretend to be a law officer. And using that power, he abducts, sodomizes, and victimizes a young boy. Well, thank God he gets caught and arrested for this. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, and what does he decide to do with his time behind bars? Escape. He's not the brightest bulb in the light fixture, and officers quickly apprehended him and took him back to the old pokey. Now, when quizzed on why did he do what he did, he said that his wife preferred not to be intimate that often because she was pregnant. So he needed something. Good God, just find another outlet. I mean, like a stripper or a hooker or something. Not a little boy. Good God. Anyway. Not surprisingly, 6 years after the assault in 1957, his wife took their daughter and pieces out of that mess. Well, Kenneth, devoted to bettering himself, that same year he gets married again. And women are dumb, I swear. Look at these red flags, girls, seriously. Anyway, just a year after his original sodomy case, Kenneth lands his ass right back in jail in Utah for armed robbery. Really, dude? I mean, thank God his new wife gets her senses quicker than the last one did and dumps his ass, divorcing him when he gets locked up. I am so on board with Brittany Vaughn. I am not ride or die. You go to jail, boom, guess what? You got a charge, and you also are suddenly single. Peace out. So after this, Kenneth Parnell starts working at Yosemite National Park. He befriends a simpleton named Urban Murphy, who worked there as well. People who knew Urban described him as a simple-minded man who was basically docile, pretty trusting, and really naive. Well, when Kenneth met Urban, I mean, this is a prime, prospect for somebody that's as manipulative as a piece of crap as Kenneth is. Kenneth had started pretending he was an aspiring minister. Well, Urban immediately respected Kenneth, and, he begins to doing, his tasks for him like a little minion. Kenneth totally takes advantage of how slow and trusting this little Urban is, and he slowly grooms him to approach young boys to kidnap for Parnell. They pull up next to a then 7-year-old Steven Stayner as he's walking home from school. Now, little Steven was the third of 5 children born to Delbert and Kay Stayner in California. They were a nice family, struggling to make ends meet and raise good, even-tempered, and gracious children. Now, one of his brothers' name was Carrie, so just remember Carrie Stayner. That will come back up. But anyway, they were, what they would consider normal. Well, when Urban approached Steven, he tells him that he is a church representative. Remember, Kenneth has trained him in saying this. So, I mean, like, he was lying to him and saying he was a minister, so Urban believed this. But anyway, Urban says that he's taking in contributions for a local church and asks Steven if that he has anything to contribute. Well, I mean, Steven is 7 years old. I mean, where's he going to get money? Anyway, When Stephen told Urban this, that he didn't have any money, Urban asked if his parents would like to donate to the church. So Stephen's like, yeah, my parents are Christian people. They'd like to give you, whatever they could to help out. Sweet little boy. Urban tells Stephen, we'll get in the car, and it's this one over here, the white Buick. My friend is driving. We'll take you to your house, and we can just stop by there. I'll drop you off, and that way I'll get the donation, and you'll get a ride home. Well, all the people in the neighborhood see is a little boy willingly getting into a car, and it doesn't look weird at all. I mean, like, there's no kidnapping red flags going up whatsoever. So it's just basically a kid catching a ride home. So that's how it went so undetected in the initial stages. They then take off, and Kenneth drives the Buick straight to his cabin. I mean, even a 7-year-old at this point is like, wait, what's up? They get to Kenneth's cabin, which is coincidentally and tragically less than a few hundred feet from Stephen's grandfather's house. Ugh. Urban is dismissed and goes on to live his simple life back at his own place. And this is where the nightmare begins for Stephen. Stephen puts on a brave face and continually begs for Kenneth to take him home. But Kenneth has already prepared a story for Stephen. He told him that he had been granted legal custody of him because his parents didn't have the money to support all of their kids anymore. Kenneth said that Stephen's parents sent him away due to the money problems, and they also just didn't want him anymore. Well, I mean, Stephen's 7. What do you expect? Of course he's going to believe him. At this point, Stephen pretty much just stops asking to go home. I mean, he sort of develops what's commonly known as trauma-related disassociation, or dissociative amnesia, sometimes it's called. Stephen just coped by accepting that at such a young age that this was his new life. And at this point, about 2 weeks after the kidnapping is when the full-on indecent assaults start happening. To almost assist in the trauma blocking, Kenneth changed Steven Stayner's name to Gregory Parnell, telling people that may have come in contact with them the new name so no one would think anything odd. Well, Kenneth and Stephen relocated from that cabin pretty quickly due to the fact that Stephen was still a missing child and he was being actively searched for, regardless of what he thought his parents didn't or did not care. They actually did. Over the next few months, they relocate across California, finally settling down. And at this point, Kenneth enrolls Gregory Parnell in school, like a normal, well, not normal, but like a father. Almost. I mean, this is instrumental in that the child further disassociates from reality because the stories add up. I mean, the people at the school would know if there was something wrong, right? I mean, like if they would allow Gregory, Stephen, whomever, to go there as Kenneth, as his father, then that further cements the story in the child's mind. What's strange, though, that if you're unaware of dissociative disorders, it's the fact that Kenneth actually started giving Stephen freedom to come and go as he pleased. And I swear to God, mark my words. Hold up. ADHD moment. Hold up. Hey. If I get one comment stating that this kid should have ran, or if anyone private messages me and starts blaming this child, so help me God, I will blast it all over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'll put your name. I'll put how hateful you are. We're not going to victim shame on this one because this, for some reason, this story is really, really, really close to me, and that's a threat. So whatever, do with it what you will. You're not going to blame Stephen for this. So you heard me. Let's get back to the case. An ADHD moment. So we don't play. But Stephen, like I said, is in no way at all to blame at all in this story. I'm just so protective of this little guy. I don't know what's got me all riled up. But you guys don't want to see that side of me. I can guarantee you that. Or maybe you do, because that probably would be kind of entertaining.
Insane. No, you're insane.
But back to the story. Stephen had some freedom, yeah. But just remember that Stephen had believed that his family had abandoned him and this was his new life. Also, Kenneth, he played the part well and he pretended to be a cool dad. And he started letting Stephen drink really young, further instilling the fact that they shared secrets and they had a real, genuine bond. But at no point did Stephen try to think about escaping because, like I said, he believed the story that he was legally adopted by Kenneth and that he was his son now. Kenneth sometimes actually treated Stephen well, aside from the, destroying his childhood and perverting any semblance of a normal familial love. But nevertheless, Stephen was able to do pretty much whatever he wanted. During this time, Kenneth Parnell's mother gave him a dog named Queenie, which Kenneth pretended that he bought for Stephen. So, it seems like a little bit of normalcy, right? Well, when Stephen was 9 years old, Kenneth started dating a woman by the name of Barbara Matthews. Things between them moved quickly, and she moved in rather fast. Kenneth told Barbara that Stephen, now known as Gregory, was his biological son. He just had a different name now, and they called him Dennis. When I heard this part, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Female intuition. You got a woman's touch coming in. Yeah. No, not at all. She was just as much of a sick piece of that Kenneth was. Barbara began to molest and indecently assault Stephen along with Kenneth. What waste of human flesh. Anyway, it was reported that Barbara and Kenneth together indecently assaulted and attacked Stephen over 9 times in an 18-month period. But Stephen was so strong, and he held his head up high somehow, and he managed to pretend that things were normal in his household. In 1975, Stephen was in the Santa Monica Boys Club. It was at this time that Kenneth spots a young boy that is also in the boys club with him. He tells Barbara to get them a new boy for them to abuse. The attempts to kidnap the boy were thankfully unsuccessful, and she was not able to lure the little boy to the car. But what is so fucked up is that this bitch had the nerve to say she had no knowledge that Stephen, Greg, Dennis, whatever, was not Kenneth's biological son. What the fuck difference would that have made? Seriously, you fucking piece of shit. Whore. Oh my God. She also claimed that she had no knowledge that Stephen was kidnapped either. Again, would that have made a difference? But back to the story. At this point, Stephen is getting older and developing like he should be physically, puberty and all that, which was a problem for Kenneth because he likes young. Oh my God, just typing this script makes me want to throw up. He wants a young boy to take Stephen's place. They start looking for another child, a younger one to kidnap. So Kenneth enlists Stephen to help him get a new victim. Oh God, I'm gonna start crying. Stephen had tried to help him multiple times, but it always seemed like Stephen would screw it up. But Stephen wasn't dumb. He knew there was something really, really wrong with this setup. But again, he just didn't know how bad things were. He didn't know any different. Kenneth was not having it though, and he decided he needed to find somebody else to lure in the children because he felt Stephen lacked what it took for him to be an effective accomplice. And those are quotes. Oh my God, again, nausea. Well, joke was on Kenneth because in actuality, Stephen knew exactly what he was doing. He was foiling the attempts on his own and was sabotaging all the attempted kidnappings because he didn't want to see another little boy go through what he had to go through at the hands of Kenneth. So there was no way that he would take part in being the reason another child was kidnapped and used for gratification like he was. Unfortunately, though, Kenneth does not let this dissuade him, and he enlists the help of one of Stephen's friends named Sean Poorman. And actually, he was just a child himself, to be honest. Gosh, it just doesn't stop. Kenneth was able to talk him into helping kidnap a young child, and on February 13th, 1980, they were out searching for a little boy unbeknownst to Stephen, and they spotted 5-year-old Timothy White playing in the family's front yard. Timothy was a tough little kid, though. He knew immediately that something wasn't right. Even at his little young age of 5, he didn't agree to get in that car. He was even fighting with them as they grabbed him and pulled him inside. Kenneth then sped off, and they head back to Kenneth's house. Just like that. In a few seconds, gone from his own front yard. Where else can a kid play if he can't even be in his front yard? When they got back to the house, Parnell tried to start the process of brainwashing like he had done with Stephen, convincing little Timothy White that his real name was Tommy and his parents didn't want him anymore, etc. But there's a problem here. Tommy? He was younger and a lot more underdeveloped emotionally than Stephen was whenever he was taken. Timothy just wasn't as easy to convince as Stephen was. And you know how little kids are. They want their mommy. So Timothy cried and cried and cried for his mommy. And he wanted his family. And he just didn't know how to cope with this. So that's all he did was just basically cry. He also wouldn't take anything that Kenneth said as the truth. He just wanted his mother, like any other little baby boy would. Well, during this time, 5-year-old Timothy formed a very strong rapport with then 14-year-old Stephen. Stephen had been shielding him up to this point for what he knew was soon coming. And over the next 2 weeks, Timothy started to really become more and more trusting of Stephen. And they formed a bond due to this fact. And Stephen was extremely protective of Timothy. I mean, Stephen knew what was eventually going to happen to Timothy. And Stephen knew that Kenneth was going to start indecently abusing Timothy at any moment unless Stephen could get Timothy out of there. Determined to do just that, on March 1st, 1980, Kenneth goes to work and leaves the 2 boys. He leaves them at home thinking nothing's going to happen. Nothing ever did. Stephen had never attempted to escape before, so why would today be any different? Well, start with the fact that Stephen was not just going to stand by and watch the same horrific, life-altering things be done to a little boy that had been done to him. Stephen took Timothy's hand and let him out of the house. And now they lived in a really remote area, long distances between major roads. So once they got to a major street, Stephen flagged down a truck driver and asked the man driving the truck to take the young boys into town. Well, he asked him to take them to the specific town that Timothy was taken from, but there was a problem. Little Timothy didn't know his address. So at this point, Stephen just says, let's go find a police station and they'll help you. Well, once they arrive, Stephen instructs Timothy to walk in and tell the policeman his name and that he was taken from his front yard. But that Timothy has to do this without Stephen. Because again, remember, at this point, Stephen still believes that he was truly on his own, since his new dad was a disgusting, lecherous, abusive degenerate, and his original biological family didn't want him. So he thought. Well, he was just going to fend for himself on the street, alone, as long as Timothy got help. Oh, don't cry. Timothy hugged Stephen and ran inside of the police station, doing just what he was told to do. The police spot Stephen before that he can run off, and they say, hey, dude, what the hell? Little kidnapped boy just walked in here. Now, what? Who the hell are you? Stephen tells them his story, and the police immediately can spot a victim of abuse. And they tell him, no, you're a victim. Let's get you back home too. Your family misses you. They've been looking for you for years. We know all about your case. Well, within 24 hours, actually, it might have been 12 hours, Kenneth Parnell was taken into custody. That same day, both children were reunited with their families. The next year, in 1980, Kenneth Parnell was tried and found guilty of both counts of kidnapping Timothy and Stephen. There were 2 trials, both found guilty. Old boy was sentenced to 7 years and paroled in just 5. Did they forget that he was previously convicted of indecent assault on a little boy back then? But due to the statute of limitations, the indecent assault charges, they couldn't even be brought forward against Kenneth Parnell. And Urban, Barbara, nope, nothing. No charges filed against them at all because no one saw anything or said anything or... Sure, I mean, just let everything go. No big deal, right? Well, they also didn't want to put Stephen through that in court because this was also a time where sexual crimes had a stigma attached to them, and it wasn't just the perpetrator. As a victim, you had a mark on you too. It's really screwed up, but thank God things are changing and it's not like that anymore. Stephen was quoted as saying that he honestly felt that Urban, the man who lured Stephen into the white Buick, was just as much of a victim as he was because he genuinely believed that he was helping Kenneth Parnell get kids into his home, raise them for a church and the ministry. After being brought back with their families, Timothy and Stephen stayed in contact. That trauma bond and the fact that Stephen basically saved Timothy's life from being far, far worse than it could have been, it kept them in close contact. But unfortunately, though, The normal life that he returned to was anything but. And he had a hard time acclimating to life and going back to school and all the attention that the case had brought onto him. He was teased in school for being gay because of being molested. I mean, Jesus. He did go to therapy, but it wasn't very long. And his dad was quoted as saying he really didn't need it. And it was just a different time with mental, struggles and illnesses, and also dealing with trauma and trauma therapy. It was a different time. But he didn't really get to ever dive into all those layers that you accumulate due to such intense trauma and bust through them and really get to the core issues of what still haunted him. All of this combined with just the stress of getting back to normalcy, it caused him to drop out of school. But however, in 1985, Steven did meet a lady by the name of Jody Edmonds, and he married her. Things were looking up for Steven Stayner, and he eventually went on to father 2 children that he doted on and adored to pieces. Steven used his experience to work with children's trauma groups and advocacy groups alike, telling his story and relating to these child victims in ways that most of us would never even know how to. He went on to join the Church of Latter-day Saints, and just a few days after he joined the church on September 16th, 1989, God help me get through this, Steven, who was only 24 years old at the time, was riding his motorcycle home from work when he collided with a car, dying as a result of blunt force trauma to his head. Oh my gosh. It was said that over 500 people attended that funeral, and that, oh my God, okay. Timothy White, who was 14 years old at the time, was a pallbearer. I've got to stop.
Thousands of tears later.
I am so sorry. My eyes are so red. Anyway, little Timothy White was just 14 years old, and he was a pallbearer for Steven. I mean, I just have a few more minutes of this story to keep it together. Timothy White, he went on to become a Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department deputy. He got married, and he had kids like Steven, and he gave talks to children about safety and never forgot to include his best friend Steven, who saved his life when he was 5 years old, when warning children about stranger danger and all that whatnot. On January 3rd, 2003, get this sack of shit. Kenneth Parnell was arrested again after trying to talk his caregiver into buying a 4-year-old boy for him. Yeah, buying a child. The caregiver, thankfully, reported him, and Kenneth stated that he only wanted to start a family, that no one really understood what his real intentions were. Dude, you're in your 70s. Find a better story. Timothy White was called to testify, in which he did, and Sean Portman was also called to testify as well. This was the first time that Timothy and Sean had seen each other since Sean assisted Kenneth in kidnapping Timothy when he was 5 years old, if you can remember that. Timothy had long since forgiven Sean, and they hugged it out. And they went their separate ways. What strong people. On February 9th, 2004, Kenneth was sentenced to 25 years to life in California under the 3 strikes law. Meaning the 3 strikes, the child porn they found, the attempted procurement of a fucking child, and oh yeah, the request to be brought a child, with what Kenneth was quoted as saying, make sure he has a clean rectum. Yeah, those 3 strikes. Fuck you, you're out. He remained incarcerated until 2008, where he died of natural causes, unfortunately. So that's it for the story of... oh, wait. No, it's not. Not even close. Timothy White. Officer Timothy White. Hero Timothy White. He passed away April 1st, 2010, from a pulmonary embolism at only 35 years old. The city of Merced, California, put up a commemorative statue of Steven and Timothy, depicting the moment that Steven escaped Kenneth Parnell and little Timothy, subsequently saving Timothy and his own life. They almost didn't put that statue up, though. You know why? Because of Steven's last name. Now we're done, right? No. Can you inflict more damage on your audience, Rainey? You bet. You remember back to the beginning of this story when I told you Steven's older brother's name was Carrie? Well, Carrie grew up to be a serial killer, brutally taking the lives of 3 innocent women. Steven made out of pure love and protection and guardianship. His own biological brother grew up to be a serial killer because of all the madness that he went through with his brother being kidnapped.
Nerves are fried from riding on this emotional roller coaster.
No outro. I'm done. I'll cover that story, but not soon because this one beat the living crap out of me. So until next time, see ya. I can't even write an outro because I'm so upset. I hope that you guys liked this story and can learn about how goodness is in the world that sometimes you can't find the goodness in, and how God bless you, Stephen. Oh my gosh. You and Timothy. Oh, you hold such a special place in my heart. I can't even tell you. I mean, when I first heard this story, it was years ago, and oh, it just stayed with me. So now I am honored that you guys have allowed me to tell your story. And for anybody who's watching this, please retell the story and just get the story out there of what wonderful people that Stephen and Timothy were. So that's it for this episode of Homicidal Tea. Hopefully I'm going to look up a story where somebody doesn't die for the next one because I can't keep doing this to myself. All right, thanks. Bye.